What's up, YouTubers and plant lovers? It's Justin, and today I was going to tell you how I care for my Caryota mitis. As you can tell, I'm doing things a little differently. I do have a 3-foot palm tree sitting next to me. I couldn't really put it up on the table. I was afraid with all that height and weight that it would just kind of overshadow me and you wouldn't be able to see much. Not to mention be able to get the entire plant and the pot and all this in the frame, so I know you can't tell, but it's a rather large pot. I believe it's in a 10-inch pot, but I wanted to tell you how I care for this beautiful, gorgeous, kind of elegant looking palm tree. Now, you've probably heard it called the fishtail palm, the Burmese fishtail palm, the clustering fishtail palm. I think they even call it the common fishtail palm, or the rabok, or the rabok. I don't know, there's two different pronunciations there towards the end. But this is the clumping fishtail palm, the clustering fishtail palm that I'm talking about, Caryota mitis. And then, of course, the Caryota is Greek for like nut or date, and that's in reference to the fruit that it does produce. And then mitis is in reference to gold. Once you touch it, it will turn to gold. I'm just kidding, it's actually spelled differently. But mitis is in reference to being unarmed or gentle, and that's just referring to the plant not having any thorns on it, like, you know, your pygmy dates and stuff like that you come into contact, that will actually cut you open and probably hurt a little bit. But this is the clustering fishtail palm, and like I said, mine's about 3 feet tall, so I wanted to tell you how I care for this beautiful looking palm tree, because it is a little bit of a harder palm tree to care for, especially if you keep it indoors. Now, these plants hail from around the tropics of China, I think from like India, East India, on over to Java, down to around like Australia kind of areas. But it is from the tropical areas and like the rainforest where it gets a lot of humidity, a lot of filtered, dappled sunlight, and a decent amount of rain. And you'll want to keep all that in mind whenever you're thinking about these palm trees and how to give it the best care that it's going to need in order to thrive. Now, in talking about light, you want to remember that this isn't a very tall palm tree. I know you think palm tree and you think quite tall, but these top out around 20 feet in nature, so they are kind of an understory plant. Typically they are grown underneath taller trees, so the light that they receive is kind of bright but filtered, kind of dappled sunlight. So you want to think about that whenever you're deciding where to place yours. It is a palm tree, so you want it to have bright filtered light. You don't want it to have too much direct sunlight. Established plants can get away with about 4 to 6 hours of direct sunlight a day, maybe a little bit more. Lesser established plants can probably get around 2 to 4 hours of direct sunlight. Ideally, you want it to be kind of morning sunlight, where it's kind of bright and early, and then afternoon you want it to be kind of protected from the sun in the harder part of the day. So afternoon you want it to kind of experience some shade, especially if it's left outside. But indoors you'll want to put it in a south facing window, maybe a Florida room or something like that, a bay window. But I keep mine outdoors because it is spring and summer. We're in the summer now in northern Kentucky, and he likes his sunlight naturally. But I put him on the north side of the house, kind of a northeast exposure, to where he'll get ample morning sunlight and, like I said, protection from the sun during the harder part of the day. And he's happy with that. I can tell at top he is having a little bit of trouble unfurling one of his leaves, but I think that was from where he started a couple of weeks ago. Since then I moved him outside, and it seems like he's opening up a little bit more and kind of bushing out some, but I would say that they do need the bright direct light if they're established around 4 to 6 hours, and if they don't get enough sunlight, they will dramatically slow their growth, and you probably won't see much growth at all. As always, whenever you're deciding where to place a plant, you'll want to keep in mind the plant's cuticle. The cuticle is actually the kind of waxy or hard covering layer that kind of encompasses the epidermis of the plant, and as it builds up the cuticle, it's able to take more sunlight. So if you have a brand new plant and you're not sure how the cuticle is on the plant, you want to introduce it to the sunlight slowly, because if it doesn't have an established, set up, well-rounded cuticle, then your plant will succumb to sunburn rather quickly. Always err on the side of caution and let your plant build up naturally and slowly. So you may want to set it in some direct sunlight for like 20 minutes the first day, and then do it about 30 the next, and gradually kind of increase the amount of sunlight each day. And you don't want to do it too fast and too hard because you will burn your plant out. And if it's a smaller size plant, it could kill your plant. But with these guys, they're not used to a bunch of bright direct sunlight, so introduce them to the sunlight slowly, and that'll help your plant out. Next, in talking about water, you do want to keep in mind that these are from the tropics. They are from the rainforest areas where they do get a decent amount of humidity and a decent amount of rain to boot. You'll always want to err on the side of caution with these guys because they prefer to keep drier soils. More often they prefer to have kind of wet, saturated, and soggy soils. In northern Kentucky, we get a decent amount of rain, so I don't have to water mine too often. But if it's been several days and the temperature's up over 85 degrees, I will go ahead and kind of water it some. If I have to, I'll lift the pot up, even though it's in a big kind of ceramic pot. You can actually get a feel, and if it feels real light and airy in the root mass, then you'll probably want to give it a little bit more water. And be careful when watering these guys too. They do have a problem with fungal leaf spot and leaf spot disease. So when you're watering, make sure that you just apply water to the soil area and try and keep it off the leaves as best as possible. Now, you also don't want to submerge the pot or put the pot in a pot of water and kind of water it from the bottom up, because that'll encourage root rot with these plants. So they can succumb to root rot rather quickly. Now, whenever I water it, I just fill up my watering pail with some water, and then I go around the entire surface of the soil area and water him that way, and take care not to kind of splash the leaves. Now, if you're keeping your humidity levels in check, you don't have to water your plant too often. As you know, there are several factors whenever you're trying to decide how much water and how often you should give your plant water. If the humidity level's at about 50% or higher, that's ideal for this plant. He likes it at least around 50%, if not a little bit higher. But if the humidity levels are being met, then you won't have problems with discoloration of the leaves, some kind of haloing brown and yellow spots, or kind of the brown crispy edges that you see on some of my leaves. And that just kind of indicates that the humidity levels aren't where they need to be. So try to keep yours in check at about 50%, if not a little bit higher. And if you're not able to monitor your humidity levels quite as often as you need to, then you should probably get on Amazon or go to Lowe's or Home Depot, because they have humidity monitors that will actually monitor the amount of humidity in any given room around your plants. And with humidifiers and humidity trays, you really don't have an excuse not to give your plant the right amount of humidity. Now, a plant of this size, everyone knows that I am totally against spraying with misting of the leaves. That is a short-term solution to a long-term problem, and you would need to stand there basically all day and kind of spray your plant. And not to mention, all that moisture around the leaves would probably indicate that you might have some problems with diseases later on down the road, so I wouldn't recommend coming in and spraying the leaves directly. Keeping a humidity tray for a plant this size is not going to be effective at all, because as the water evaporates, before it gets way up into the air, it's not going to hit all these leaves, and it'll be sucked out of the air before it can actually get up in here and do its job. So humidifiers are your best bet with these plants if kept indoors. Outdoors, if you're in a place like me in northern Kentucky, you don't really have to worry too much about humidity, because we're always getting rain and our environment is very humid around here. But if you're struggling with humidity outside, then you can go ahead and water your plants more. Now, in deciding on your pot and soil, you'll want to make sure that you have a pot full of drainage holes. Now, with this size pot, it's about a 10-inch pot. It's got 3 decent sized drainage holes in the bottom, so it lets water drain away freely. And being able to do that will keep your plant alive longer. Like I said, they succumb to root rot rather quickly, and if water is left in the root mass, your plant will drown and it will succumb to root rot fast. Now, in deciding what soil you want to use, you need to plan for a lot of water. Like I said, with mine, I used 3 parts of a reputable potting soil. This was a tropical kind of potting soil that Miracle-Gro makes. It kind of focused on palms and tropical plants like that, mixed into about 1 part of like a horticultural grade sand. Now when I say horticultural grade sand, I just mean sand that's been washed extensively. If you use a sand like a beach sand, it's got a lot of silt and a lot of salt present in there, and that will actually wreak havoc on your plant and kill it if left unchecked. You can use builder's sand when deciding what sand to add to your soil, or just a horticultural grade sand, and that'll actually help create air spaces in your soil to let the excess water kind of drain through the soil more freely and run out the bottom. So if you keep a saucer under there, always make sure that you empty your saucer after about 20 minutes. After about that time, the plant's no longer able to hold on to any more water, and if you keep water in there, your plant will probably drown. These guys aren't too heavy feeders either. To wake mine up after dormancy, I recommend using a kind of liquid palm plant fertilizer, a reputable one. Miracle-Gro has a good one. And then I feed it to kind of wake it up, and then I probably won't feed it again for another 2 or 3 months. Typically, I recommend feeding him about 2, maybe 3 times throughout the growing season. But like I said, they're not very heavy feeders, and if you use a soil that's high in like organic compost, or it's organically rich, you don't need to feed your fishtail palm that often. And actually, these plants do like a little bit of more organic compost or organic matter in their soil too. So it doesn't need to be just something that drains really well with like sand in it, but you'll want to mix in some kind of tropical soil, and then I mix in a little bit more of this kind of organic compost stuff from Miracle-Gro as well, and then a little bit of horticultural grade sand. But if you don't have that, you can use pumice or perlite in place of sand. And if you feel like you've added too much sand to your mix, more peat moss needs to be added to your soil media to kind of help balance out that sand. Now, in talking about this plant, I do want to let you know that it is highly toxic. It's not highly toxic, but the pericarp of the fruit contains something called calcium oxalate, and it's in the form of like spines. So if ingested, it can cause contact dermatitis with your hands and your mouth, and you can experience extreme itchiness and burning, and sometimes these spines can be ingested and inhaled. So if you ingest a lot of it, or you know someone that has, seek medical attention, because it can be extremely uncomfortable and cause kind of sickness too, and a burning sensation as well. Most people at risk are younger ones that may see the kind of black and red covered fruit or berries and think they are edible and that they are harmless, but they are toxic. So make sure that if you do have any pets, any dogs, cats, birds, or any young ones running around, I wouldn't recommend keeping this plant, as the sap is kind of toxic too and can cause problems with dermatitis. And last, I want to let you know that this plant is very susceptible to pests and disease. I will tell you that the roots are very shallow on this on this plant. So if you are repotting, and coincidentally, repotting needs to be done about every 2 to 3 years. And you want to cover up the roots fairly well, because if it's left in an arid, kind of windy area, the plant will dry out and die rather quickly. So make sure you're not putting it in an area that receives a lot of wind or a lot of air circulation, or next to a heater or an oscillating fan or anything of that nature indoors, because it will dry your plant out quickly and probably kill it if left unchecked. But with the shallow root system, it can cause transplant shock rather quickly if you're not careful with the shallow roots on this plant. I did mention earlier that they do have a problem with leaf spot disease. If you do find that yours is having like kind of chlorosis or any kind of leaf spots, you'll want to remove any of the infected leaves and dispose of them properly, and make sure that they don't come into contact with any other plant, because it can be a fungus and spread that way. But you'll want to remove any of them that do seem infected, and then put the plant in an area that does receive a little bit more air circulation than it normally, or that it was in prior. And then more filtered light would probably help the situation out drastically too. So make sure that if you do have leaf spot, that you do have an area that receive air circulation and a brighter light. With pests, they do have a problem with spider mites, and you'll want to be careful with spider mites because they can set up shop under the fronds and the leaves. So always make sure that if you move your plant around or you're watering it, that you're kind of looking underneath the leaves. These are perfect for covering up any kind of pest, not just spider mites, but look along the midrib of these bipinnate leaves. And if you see any kind of small filaments or webs or any kind of gritty looking pests, then you probably do have a problem with spider mites, and spider mites will actually get underneath the leaves and kind of suck away all the chlorophyll from your plant. Now, if you do find that you have a problem with any of these pests, spider mites, mealybugs, whiteflies, thrips, scale, root mealybugs, I mean the list goes on. You can actually take your plant, set it outside, spray it off with a garden hose, and get over and under every leaf and every stem. And when you spray it off, or you can take a microfiber cloth or a washcloth and then mix it in with a solution of about 3 parts warm water and 1 part lemon juice, and kind of go over top and over and under every leaf, and you'll wipe away any of the pests that way too. If you do find that you do have a kind of larger infestation, you can use isopropyl alcohol or neem oil on a washcloth, or some Q-tips, and kind of go to town on the plant that way. But you should probably be cleaning the leaves at least every other month, just to make sure that you don't have a problem with any kind of detritus or waste or anything kind of blocking the leaves out and clogging the stomata, and then causing problems with its photosynthesis either. Now, I do want to tell you that these plants are very cold hardy and they can survive a light frost. Typically they like temperatures around 65 to 85 degrees Fahrenheit. If it gets over 85 degrees Fahrenheit, your plant is no longer going to be photosynthesizing because of the temperature. And if it gets down too cold, your plant can actually start to go dormant. And if it doesn't get a lot of water, it'll actually go dormant too. So in choosing water, make sure it doesn't go through any prolonged periods of drought, or it may start to go dormant. Alright guys, and as always, I wanted to give a special shout out to my top tier tree patrons like Thuyen. Thank you. I'd also like to give another shout out to my other patrons like David and Heather. If you were interested in supporting my channel through Patreon, check the link in the description box below. As always, the money goes to keeping the lights on, the LEDs on, feeding and watering the plants, and repotting, and you know, the list goes on. It's expensive being a plant dad. Alright guys, well this has been Justin reminding you that if you can, go out and plant a tree. Let's reforest the world. And while you're at it, leave me a comment and let me know if you've ever had any kind of success or failures with any of the fishtail palms. Like I said, this is the clumping fishtail palm, and it's great for indoor and outdoor use as well. And don't forget to hit the subscribe button or the bell next to it. That way you'll know anytime that I've uploaded a new video. Give me a like and a thumbs up, because it always helps me out. Alright guys, take it easy and have a good one, and don't forget, always plant prudently. Thank you, YouTube.